cover what are the problems, what is the objective in a retirement plan which any client will have, right? What are the constraints or concerns which a client has by doing the traditional way of retirement planning? What we feel is the right way and how you can actually make a retirement plan for your clients. And you can show him that how his money is going to be managed over the next 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, right? And how it scores and actually covers all the problems which a traditional retirement plan has, right? So I'll share two things. I'll first take you through the presentation, and we also have an Excel in which you can play around because the client might have different needs and different wants, how you can play around with that Excel, I think. So I'll just explain that as well so that it would be helpful for you. Any questions, partners, you all have, you all can post it in the Q&A box and I'll be happy to take them. I'll take them at the end. Yeah. Just let me share my screen. I hope the screen is visible. Anyone can just message and then I'll start. I hope the screen is visible. I'll start. So what are the objectives of a retirement plan? Basically, anyone who's actually planning for his retirement, he requires monthly flows, right? Monthly inflows every month. And those monthly flows should be able to beat inflation. That is something which is very critical because whatever expenses I have today will not be equivalent after 5 years, right? Because inflation adds to whatever expenses I had 5 years ago, my expense are not the same, right? It's like if I was spending 50,000 per month in 2018, my expenses have increased. So my expense would not be 50,000. It would be say a 55 or a 60 or a 65, depending on each individual. But the point is that the objective is that the regular monthly flow should beat inflation because the person has stopped earning. So his regular flow, which should grow at inflation so that his monthly flow is covered off. He doesn't need to compromise on his lifestyle or his important expenses. He needs to maintain the same lifestyle throughout the retired life, right? He doesn't need to compromise on his on his lifestyle or on his expenses, right? After retirement, you would not want to compromise on anything, right? Because you work the entire career so that you can retire peacefully and you can enjoy your retirement life. So at that moment, you don't want to compromise or want to cut down on your lifestyle, right? Third thing is the overall corpus should outlast the retirement life. Now that's something which is very critical. We don't know that we might live till after 60, we might live till 70, or we might live till 80, or we might live till 90, right? So the objective is that the overall corpus should outlast my retirement life. That I don't need to depend on something and my retirement corpus should not finish. It should outlast the retirement life. That's the objective, right? Of course, fourth thing is it should be liquid. It should be liquid at all time. So there is no restrictions or there are any lock-ins. That is something which is a no-no. I would want the money to be liquid at all time post-retirement. And last one is it should be tax efficient. So whatever the structure is, it should be efficient. I would be paying lesser taxes or lower taxes, and it should be tax efficient, right? Tax is not the only priority, but whatever gains are there, if I have something where my tax can be managed efficiently, I think so that is something which an individual will look out for a retirement plan, right? So these are the 5 objectives which most of the clients would have. Now, what are the current pain points which a client has? So one of the most common method of retirement planning, which most clients do, is that they invest in a bank. कि बैंक में FD कर ली है and उसका interest जो है, that is something which they will use to manage their expenses. That's one of the major plan which most clients have for their retirement. के बैंक में डाल दिया है या senior citizen saving schemes में डाल दिया है या LIC का वो वय वंदना योजना में डाला है, right? This is something which most clients do, and that is a very inefficient way of doing it. But ये भी करने में first problem is कि the returns are post tax are lower than the inflation. मतलब returns जो है, returns are much lower than the inflation which the client is facing. So FD, we all know that currently the rates are say 6.5, 7, 7.5, say 8% also in some cases, right? But if you remove the taxes, your returns are much lower than the inflation. So if your returns are lower than the inflation, means inflation is growing at a faster rate compared to your returns. Ultimately, this will catch up. Inflation will eat into your returns, and then you would have to get into and start consuming your principal, which is not growing, right? So this is a very unfavorable scenario. This is what most clients do. And we need to educate if the client doesn't understand this, because this is something which is very critical. ये अगर नहीं समझ में आता है आज अगर क्लाइंट को, एंड वो अगर सिर्फ प्लेनली एफडी में डाल रहा है, आज जो एफडी के रेट है वो 5 साल बाद सेम नहीं रहेंगे. मोस्टली द एफडी रेट्स विल बी लोअर देन व्हाट वी आर टुडे, राइट? सो इफ ऑन 1 crore he has, say at 8% or at 7%, he is making 7 lakh rupees. Same after 5 years, the interest rate comes down to 5%, he will make only 5 lakh rupees. And if he's only dependent on this 7 lakh rupees to consume and maintain his expenses, मतलब 5 साल बाद उसको उसके खर्चे कम करने पड़ेंगे, लाइफस्टाइल पे कॉम्प्रोमाइज करना पड़ेगा, बिकॉज इंटरेस्ट रेट तो कम होने ही वाला है. दैट इज समथिंग विच इज अ गिवन, राइट? सो फॉलिंग इंटरेस्ट रेट इज अ बिग पेन पॉइंट फॉर क्लाइंट्स, एंड यू हैव टू रिन्यू इट. एफडी आपको 30 साल की एफडी नहीं करोगे, आप 2 साल की करोगे, 5 साल की करोगे, एंड यू विल हैव टू रिन्यू इट, एंड योर renewal will come in where the lower interest rates में आपका इन्वेस्ट होना ही है. वो 5 नहीं होगा, 5.5 होगा, बट इन्वेस्ट तो होगा ही at lower rate. So that's a risk which, and that's a pain point which a client has. Risk of losing principal for increased monthly inflows. So as my expenses increase and if my income goes down, यही सिनेरियो है आज अगर कोई भी एफडी में कर रहा है या सीनियर सिटीजन में कर रहा है, कि मेरा इनकम जो है आज इंटरेस्ट रेट फिक्स, आज अगर इंटरेस्ट रेट 7-8% है, बट अगले 5 साल बाद तो नीचे होगा, तो मेरा ड्रॉइंग कैपेसिटी कम होगा. तो आज मैं अगर 7 लाख का खर्चा कर रहा हूँ, सपोज जो मैं एग्जांपल दे रहा था, 5 साल बाद मेरा खर्चा मुझे 5 लाख करना पड़ेगा. तो अगर मुझे 7 लाख करना है तो मुझे प्रिंसिपल यूज करना पड़ेगा. So धीरे धीरे if I start using and start getting into the principal, and my future income is further getting lower and lower and lower, right? So this is a very risky game which I think so we need to explain to the client. So client को हमें समझाना पड़ेगा और बताना पड़ेगा कि यार अगर आपका रिटर्न्स जो है इन्फ्लेशन से कम है, तो then boss inflation will catch up in the long term. It will catch up in 5 years, 10 years. You'll see a much bigger impact, and that's where we will struggle, right? Fourth important point is liquidity at the cost of compromise monthly flows. So in a mutual fund, we know we can, if we invest 1 crore, we don't need to redeem 1 crore, right? We can withdraw 5 lakhs, we can withdraw 2 lakhs, we can withdraw 10 lakhs. The balance amount continues to grow. But in an FD, if you have done an FD of 1 crore and if you want to redeem 10 lakhs, you have to cut the entire FD and then you have to reinvest. Senior citizens में तो liquidity नहीं है. So somewhere there is liquidity problems as well, right? So in retirement, I don't need to compromise on my liquidity as such. But currently आज पेन पॉइंट है कि अगर क्लाइंट को इमरजेंसी में कुछ पैसा निकालना है तो उसको उसकी पूरी एफडी कट करनी पड़ती है एंड देन रीडू दी एफडी. अगर उसने 2 साल पहले कोई हायर रेट पे की है एंड अभी ये रेट्स कम है, so then there is a problem because your future monthly flows will be lower and you'll have to compromise on कि यार आज पहले की मेरे को एफडी पे ज्यादा रिटर्न मिल रहा था, अभी की एफडी में कम रिटर्न मिल रहा है, मींस माय मंथली intake is lower, right? So that's a problem. And last one is whatever income which we generate from investing in an FD or senior citizen saving schemes is taxable at marginal rates, right? So the client is paying the taxation at the highest slab. If he has this income, if he has any other income, all this clubbed together, his income tax slab will be on the highest slab. And it is tax inefficient as well. अगर 30% tax देना है तो अगर मेरा 7 लाख का अगर interest है and उस पे if I have to pay 30% tax, my net income is only 5 lakhs. I'm paying effectively 2 lakhs का tax. Now 2 lakhs का tax से 5 लाख रुपया अगर बन रहा है, so your post tax income is further lower, right? And in future जैसे interest rate कम होगा उस पे भी टैक्स दे के और मेरा जो मंथली फ्लो के लिए जो कॉर्पस बचता है वो और कम हो जाएगा, राइट? सो दीज आर द करंट पेन पॉइंट्स व्हिच most of the clients will have if they are dependent on an FD or the senior citizen schemes to manage their retirement. Now this is a problem, right, which we need to address, and we can help the client in achieving the ideal objectives which I mentioned in the first slide. So what should be a retirement plan? So what we suggest is that you invest in the combination of debt funds, structured product, and mutual funds. Now, why these three products? These three products can help you actually manage your retirement pretty well, right? It will cover all your requirements. It will cover your inflation. It will cover your lifestyle expenses. It will cover your liquidity point. It is tax efficient, right? So it covers everything. So what we are suggesting that you have a combination of debt funds, right? So the objective from the debt funds is that there should be no risk on capital, right? यहाँ पे मेरा capital पे I am not risking my capital. I know that my money is safe and I'll get a steady return on it. That's the objective from investing in debt funds. Structure product, what it does is, as we all know, it works as a plan B for our portfolio. So we see what combination is, but I'm just explaining the product individually so that you understand it. Structure product, what it does is it works as a plan B. Even if perform, the structure product will be able to deliver double-digit returns. That's what the objective of the structure product is. That's what the objective of plan B is. That at 3 to 5.5% movement per annum, the structure product delivers 13 to 14%, right? So it is accelerating my returns. It is reducing the risk because the standard deviation of a structure product is 4%. The standard deviation of Nifty is 12%. So my risk is almost 1/3 of Nifty. My returns are getting accelerated, and the probability of structure product delivering over a 5-year period is 85%. So my probability is increasing, my returns is accelerated, my risk is reduced. And that's why structure product works as a perfect plan B. And that's why we've included that in the retirement plan as well, because it helps in the overall objective of the retirement plan. The last part is equity mutual funds. It will help in creating wealth in the long term. Equity is something which has delivered over the last 30 years. It should deliver over the next 10, 15, 20 years as well. We all know India is the fastest growing economy. It is expected to grow over the next 5 years to be the fastest economy, right? So it is not only 1 year. It is expected to be the fastest growing economy for each of the next 5 years, right? So that is positive. The GST collections, the tax collections have been positive. The inflation number, if we track the inflation number, the inflation is well within range. The interest rates, not immediately, but over the next 1 year should come down. The fiscal deficit position is much better because the government revenues are much higher than what the expectation is. So that gives the government much more play, right? So equity mutual fund, the direction, if I look at the direction of the market over the next 5 years or the next 10 years, this is something which looks very positive. One more important data point is that if you look at data for the last 22 years, the nominal GDP growth has been around 11% and Nifty has delivered 12%. So if my GDP growth rate for the next 5 years is 6.5%, and if I add a 5% inflation, the nominal GDP is expected to grow at around 11% to 12% over the next 5 to 10 years. And looking at the trend of Nifty, that Nifty is able to deliver 1.5% higher than the nominal GDP growth rate. So Nifty should be able to deliver around 11 to 12%, and mutual fund should be able to deliver another 2 to 3% alpha. So we are in a scenario position that over the next 5 to 10 years, the market should be able to deliver a 12 to 14% per annum. So that direction looks positive. So that's why if investing in equity, and if we can actually have a right time frame, this can further add value to the client's portfolio. This is how his portfolio can beat inflation Otherwise, any other instrument which is giving fixed return of 6, 7, 8%, inflation is growing at a faster rate than that. Inflation will eat into his returns and he will have to compromise on his lifestyle or eat into his principal, which will be a further problem in the next 5 years or 10 years post that. So this combination of debt funds, structure product and equity mutual funds, we use the withdrawal mechanism, which is the tax efficient withdrawal mechanism, which is the systematic withdrawal plan to fund regular monthly income. So what this does is this is tax efficient as well, because the products which we have included there's much more tax efficiency. That is something which can help you plan your investments and you can see how the value can grow. And it allows liquidity as well. So if any liquidity requirements are there in between, any emergency requirements are there in between, you can remove lump sum money and manage that. So this plan basically gives you that flexibility. It will help you grow your monies also at more than inflation. So you can cover the inflation part as well, right? It is tax efficient as well. And your money is also growing. That is something which is very critical because the money should outlast your retirement life. And we don't know that we will stay for till what age we can live. That is something which is not in anyone's hand. So we have to plan for that as well. That is something which is very critical. So the SWV plan basically is the combination of this. तो इन तीनों प्रोडक्ट्स का कॉम्बिनेशन है. ये क्या कॉम्बिनेशन है ये मैं बताता हूँ. सो यहाँ पे एक सैंपल लिया है हमने कि अगर कोई क्लाइंट है जिसका 1 करोड़ का रिटायरमेंट कॉर्पस है, राइट, मतलब 1 करोड़ है उसके पास, रिटायर हो रहा है, मेरे पास अभी 1 करोड़ का पोर्टफोलियो है एंड हिज मंथली रिक्वायरमेंट्स आर 50,000 रुपीज. मतलब हर महीने उसको 50,000 रुपया चाहिए. We also done that the expenses are expected to grow at 7% per annum. What does this mean is कि first year का उसका requirement है 50,000. Next year this will grow at 7%. मतलब next year ये 3,500 बढ़ जाएगा. मतलब next year होगा 53,500. उसके बाद 53,500 पे 7% grow होगा and so on and so forth. Means his monthly expenses are growing at 7% per annum, right? So inflation, important point, we should cover it with the clients, right? तो 1 करोड़ का कॉर्पस है, 50,000 का मंथली रिक्वायरमेंट है, मंथली रिक्वायरमेंट is growing at 7%. So what are we suggesting him? We are suggesting him 3 things. That you invest in debt funds, which is the arbitrage funds, which I covered in the session last week. The arbitrage funds, structure product and equity funds. Now there is a suggestion. The amount is there कि कितना आज अगर 1 करोड़ दे रहा है मुझे क्लाइंट तो कहाँ इन्वेस्ट होगा. तो पहले 30,88,000 is getting invested in the arbitrage fund, right? Now why 30,80,000? तो what यहाँ पे हमने क्या प्लान किया है कि क्लाइंट के जो फर्स्ट 5 ईयर के रिक्वायरमेंट है, मतलब पहले 5 साल का जो रिक्वायरमेंट है वो मैं पूरा का पूरा डेट फंड्स में डाल दूंगा, मतलब आर्बिट्राज फंड्स में डाल दूंगा एंड वहां से विड्रॉ होगा एंड एवरी मंथ क्लाइंट को वहां से पैसा जाएगा. सो दैट्स व्हाई 30,88,000 is getting invested in debt funds, which is the arbitrage funds. एंड क्लाइंट के पहले 5 साल का जो मंथली रिक्वायरमेंट है, मतलब 50,000 फिर 53,500 एंड देन सो ऑन एंड सो फोर्थ, all this money will be redeemed from the arbitrage funds. मतलब उसके पहले 5 साल का रिक्वायरमेंट जो है वो पूरे मैंने सेफ इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स डेट फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट कर दिया है. सो आई नो बाय फर्स्ट 5 ईयर का रिक्वायरमेंट इज गोइंग टू बी मेट बाय द आर्बिट्राज फंड्स. क्लाइंट को कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, सीधा उसका पैसा हर महीने वहां से डिडक्ट होके क्लाइंट के अकाउंट में चले जाएगा. सो दैट्स द फर्स्ट थिंग व्हिच वी हैव डन इज दैट फर्स्ट 5 ईयर का requirement is invested in the debt funds, which is the arbitrage funds. Now arbitrage funds, I'll just brief on what arbitrage funds are. So arbitrage funds, the benefit is that they take a hedge position, so it is not an open position. तो जो भी होगा अगर cash and spot and future का जो difference है, they take on the benefit out of that. So it is always a hedge position. It is safe as such. There is no market risk because they are always, their position is net zero. तो market का कोई position नहीं होता है. The current arbitrage funds are delivering 7%, 7.1%, right? Taxation is benefit. So if the client withdraws within 1 year, the taxation is 15%. If it withdraws after 1 year, the taxation is 10%, right? So taxation wise also it is efficient. And return wise, currently it is 7.1%. I've still taken a 5% returns I have considered. So consideration क्या कर रहा हूं मैं कि first 5 year requirement invested in debt funds which are arbitrage funds. I've taken an assumption that these debt funds will deliver a 5% per annum return post tax, right? Now taxation में benefit कहां पे होता है कि client ने डाला है 30,88,000 and probably is first 5 year का requirement say let's for example it's around 32 33 lakhs, say 33 lakhs है तो 2 lakh का gain है. So on that 2 lakh का gain only he has to pay tax. He doesn't have to pay tax on 30 lakh 88,000, right? So 88 उसका first 5 year का requirement is 33 lakhs. So 2 lakhs का जो difference है on which he will pay a tax. So tax efficient है because you don't pay a tax on the entire principal amount, you pay tax only on the gains. आप gains पे ही tax भरते हो. तो gains का जो tax का जो impact है वो as it is मैंने returns में ले लिया. I've considered a lower returns which is 5%. So that impact is also considered. So first 5 year client is sorted, debt में डाला है, वहां से हर महीने वहां से पैसा क्लाइंट को जाएगा. नाउ सेकंड मैं आज 1 करोड़ जो क्लाइंट दे रहा है उसमें से मैं 20 लाख जो है वो स्ट्रक्चर प्रोडक्ट में डाल रहा हूं फॉर अ 5 year पीरियड. नाउ वेयर दिस अमाउंट ऑफ 20 lakhs कम्स इन, सो यहां पे व्हाट वी हैव डन इज दैट क्लाइंट का जो 6 7 8 9 ये जो 4 साल का रिक्वायरमेंट है पर का रिक्वायरमेंट तो डेट में चले गया. 6 to 9 years मतलब अगले 4 साल का है that should come in from the proceeds by investing in structure product. तो इस केस में ऑलमोस्ट 38 to 40 lakhs का रिक्वायरमेंट है क्लाइंट का from 6th to 9th year. So उस हिसाब से if I invest 20 lakhs, I know that after 5 years this 20 lakhs will become 40 lakhs. So उस हिसाब से the structure allocation is 20%. 20 lakhs has been invested here. Now this 20 lakhs is expected to grow 40 lakhs. इसकी probability जैसे मैंने बताई 85% की probability है. At 5.6% per annum movement in Nifty, the product delivers 14.2%, right? With downside protection of 15%. So 6th to 9th year, the investments of structure product तो 5 years के बाद structure redeem हो जाएगा. That amount से client का 6th to 9th year का जो withdrawal है वो cover होगा. I've taken, of course, I've taken post tax. So post tax returns are 11.4. We've considered 20% taxation, which is the taxation of years. So 1% पे अगर मैं grow करता हूँ 20 lakhs को, his 6th to 9th year का withdrawal amount is something which will get managed from the structure product. And post 9th year, मतलब 10वें साल से we will touch the equity mutual funds to withdraw the monthly amounts. So what this plan is doing, so आज almost 49% मैं बोल रहा हूँ client को आप equity mutual funds में डाल दो, right? We've taken a 12% post tax returns. एक ईयर से मैं equity से पैसा withdraw करूंगा. मतलब मैंने equity को 9 साल दिया है grow होने के लिए. As I was discussing earlier, right? Over the next 5 years, next 10 years, the direction, and if we look at the Indian markets, the direction is positive. If the market delivers 12, 13, 14%, and we know that in the short term, the market is much more volatile. But in the long term, as we progress more, 7 years, 8 years, 9 years, 10 years, the probability of making 0% is making negative returns is 0. The probability of making 6% or more is almost 90% plus. So this reduces the risk of equity volatile short term equity में सेट होने हैं. ये टेंशन निकल जाता है बिकॉज क्लाइंट इक्विटी को टच कब कर रहा है 10th ईयर में. पहले 9 इयर्स का रिक्वायरमेंट तो उसका डेट फंड्स और स्ट्रक्चर प्रोडक्ट से मीट हो जाएगा. 10th ईयर का रिक्वायरमेंट जो है वो इक्विटी म्यूचुअल फंड से हम विड्रॉ करेंगे. दिस प्लान व्हाट इट डज इज कि योर मंथली रिक्वायरमेंट्स आर आल्सो मेट, राइट, एंड योर मनी इज आल्सो ग्रोइंग. दैट इज समथिंग व्हिच इज वेरी क्रिटिकल बिकॉज योर मनी हैज टू ग्रो. अगर आपका मनी नहीं ग्रो हो रहा है then देन प्रॉब्लम है, क्योंकि इंटरेस्ट रेट्स पे अगर आप डिपेंडेंट हो तो इंटरेस्ट रेट्स कम हो जाएंगे, मंथली एक्सपेंसेस बढ़ जाएंगे, you will have to touch in your and you'll have to eat. So this plan is managing my monthly requirements for the first 9 years. From the 10th year, the money comes out from equity and I'm giving enough time for equity also to deliver. एक साल में नहीं, 9 साल, 10 साल, तो मेरी probability भी बहुत high है कि यार equity will deliver, and this is how the client's money will grow. His expenses, even if you inflate it at 7%, he can easily manage his expenses. And this is what I wanted to show in the next slide कि अगर 20 साल का अगर हम देखते हैं, क्लाइंट ने 20 साल के लिए प्लान किया है, तो उसने स्टार्ट किया था 1 करोड़ से, टोटल मंथली पे आउट ओवर 20 इयर्स, मतलब 20 साल में हर मंथ का अगर उसका जो पे आउट है अगर वो देखते हैं तो उसने 2 करोड़ 45 लाख रुपीस विड्रॉ किया है, मतलब डाला 1 करोड़ है, 20 साल में ही इज विड्रॉन 2 करोड़ 45 बिकॉज हिज expenses are inflating at 7%. Even after withdrawing 2 crore 45 lakhs, investment value उसकी कितनी है 20 साल के बाद? 2 करोड़ 16 लाख, मतलब उसने डाला था 1 करोड़, 20 साल में उसने 2.5 करोड़ कंज्यूम भी किया है, उसके बाद भी 2 करोड़ रुपया आज भी उसके पोर्टफोलियो में वैल्यू है। उसकी मंथली आउटगो इन द 20th ईयर, मतलब स्टार्ट किया 50,000 से, बट मंथली आउटगो इन द 20th ईयर इज 1,81,000, मतलब हर महीने वो 1,81,000 निकाल रहा है। इवन आफ्टर दैट हिज पोर्टफोलियो वैल्यू इज 2 crores, हिज पे आउट ओवर द फर्स्ट 20 years इज 2 crore 45 lakhs, मतलब ये सब निकालने के बाद भी client 1,81,000 भी निकाल पा रहा है, and he's been able to manage his expenses, he's been able to manage his lifestyle. The projected IRR is 11.8. So this plan is something which will help client to actually manage his retirement life well. अगर आज एक client कोई आता है and 1 करोड़ डालता है, and if he invests say in an FD, his 1 crore will remain 1 crore because the entire interest amount is something which he is consuming. राइट, तो वो उसके पास कोई पैसा बच ही नहीं रहा है, तो इन्वेस्टमेंट वैल्यू आफ्टर 20 years विल बी 1 crore ओनली। मंथली पे आउट्स वो 2.5 करोड़ निकाल ही नहीं सकता है, अगर 6 लाख रुपया निकाल रहा है और 20 साल का अगर देखता हूं मैं डेटा तो 12 लाख रुपया होता है, इट इज 1.2 crore, राइट, बट यहाँ पे तो 2.5 करोड़ निकाल रहा है, तो वो 1.2 ही निकाल सकेगा, 1 crore विल रिमेन 1 crore, means he has to compromise on his expenses or he has to compromise on his lifestyle, which is very difficult in a retirement age, right? So this plan is what this is doing is कि यार आपका principal भी grow कर रहा है so that your lifestyle can be maintained, can beat inflation, you can take accelerated or inflated monthly payouts as well to manage your lifestyle, right? So this plan with liquidity, with tax efficiency, so this is what plan actually addresses. So retirement plan is expected to deliver more than double digit of the FD. So FD at 6-7%, this is delivering 11.8%. So it is beating inflation and actually your money is growing. So this is the first point जो retirement plan जो मैंने बताया आपको वो help करता है. Falling interest rates, so combination है of equity, structure and debt. So inflation beating returns मिल रहे हैं because जो equity जो सबसे volatile asset class है जो double digit deliver कर सकता है उसको मैंने सबसे ज्यादा time दिया है. Right, so I know I am in the right space. Initial मेरा जो भी requirement है वो मैं मेरे debt और structure product से manage कर रहा हूँ. So I am well placed to beat inflation and not depend or not reduce my monthly payouts even if interest rates drop, क्योंकि मेरा interest rate से कोई dependency नहीं है. Risk of losing principal, so principal is expected to double. तो जैसे मैंने आपको example में दिखाया कि यार 1 crore is becoming 2 crores after 20 years, तो my principal is to doubling. राइट, इवन विद इन्फ्लेटेड पे आउट्स, मतलब आज 50,000 है और 20वें साल में 1,80,000 निकाल रहा है महीने में, उसके बावजूद क्लाइंट का प्रिंसिपल जो है वो 1 करोड़ नहीं 2 करोड़ हो रहा है आफ्टर 20 years. सो इज इन अ मच बेटर स्पेस, मच बेटर पोजिशन, राइट. पोर्टफोलियो बिंग लिक्विड, आप कभी भी विड्रॉ कर सकते हो इमरजेंसीज में, सो देयर इज नो डिपेंडेंसी विच इज देयर इन एन एफडी के यार नहीं मुझे पूरा निकालना पड़ेगा एंड फिर बाद में फिर से री इन्वेस्ट करना पड़ेगा, री इन्वेस्टमेंट रेट स्लो हो सकती है, तो दोज रिस्क्स आर नॉट देयर. टैक्सेबल एट मार्जिनल रेट, सो यहाँ पे टैक्स एफिशिएंसी है. डेट म्यूचुअल फंड्स जैसे मैंने बताया कि द टैक्सेशन इज 15% इन शॉर्ट टर्म, 10% इन लॉन्ग टर्म, स्ट्रक्चर में 20% है, इक्विटी में 10% टैक्सेशन है, राइट. So tax also is efficient compared to client who is paying taxes in an FD on that marginal rate, right? So 20%, 30% tax pay कर रहा है वो, but यहाँ पे आपका tax जो है equity पे 10% है, debt पे it is as it is 15 and 10%, structured product पे 20% है. That is only 20% of my portfolio. So this plan basically helps in how you can position this is कि आज काफी clients होंगे जो रिटायरमेंट के लिए ये दो तीन चीजें करते हैं. आई थिंक सो वी नीड टू डिस्कस दिस विद द क्लाइंट. ये प्रेजेंटेशन आप यूज करो एंड आई शो यू दी एक्सेल कैलकुलेटर वेर यू कैन इनपुट द डेटा. हर क्लाइंट का रिक्वायरमेंट शायद अलग होगा. आप वो इनपुट करो, यू कैन प्ले अराउंड विद दैट कैलकुलेटर सो दैट आपको और क्लाइंट को भी एक आइडिया मिलेगी कि यार हाउ दिस प्लान विल वर्क. मतलब कहाँ पैसा जाएगा, कैसे इन्वेस्ट होगा, कहाँ से निकलेगा, हाउ इट विल वर्क, राइट. कि assumptions जो है we can have some logical and reasonable assumptions. अगर क्लाइंट का रिक्वायरमेंट बहुत ज्यादा है, फ्लो बहुत कम है, तो वहां पे आई थिंक सो दिस प्लान कैन ऑल्सो बी यूज. वहां पे आप बता सकते हो क्लाइंट को कि सर आपका अगर रिक्वायरमेंट इतना ज्यादा है और आपके पास अगर फंड्स कम है, सो देन बॉस देयर इज अ रिस्क. वो भी हम बता सकते हैं क्लाइंट को. अगर क्लाइंट का रिक्वायरमेंट कम है, इन्वेस्टमेंट अमाउंट बहुत ज्यादा है, so that comfort also which you can give to the client कि sir नहीं, we are well placed in between. कभी भी अपने को कुछ अगर requirement है तो I think so that shouldn't be a problem. So use that calculator. I'll just share the calculator and I'll take the same example so that you can understand. So I hope the screen is visible. This is the plan. आप यहाँ पे आप वैल्यू इनपुट करोगे, क्लाइंट के पास कॉर्पस कितना है, दिस इज इन लैक्स, so that's why I put in 100. So 100 मतलब 1 crore. Client का monthly requirement is 50,000. We've taken an inflation rate of 7%. Debt mutual funds का return is 5%. Structure का return is 11.4 and equity mutual fund का return is 12%. Now the ones which are highlighted in yellow is something which you all can change. आप इसको change कर सकते हो. Suppose client के पास 1 crore 20 lakhs है, his requirement is say 40,000. एंड इन्फ्लेशन उसके हिसाब से उसको लगता है कि नहीं यार 7% पे नहीं ग्रो होगा, मेरा 5% पे ही ग्रो होगा. सो यू कैन पुट इन दोज नंबर्स. इक्विटी यू कैन चेक, डोंट बी अग्रेसिव. नंबर देखना है क्लाइंट को तो देख सकता है. वी टेकन अ कंजर्वेटिव नंबर. यू कैन पुट इन एन अग्रेसिव नंबर, यू कैन टेक इन अ कंजर्वेटिव नंबर कि नहीं 10% पे देखते हैं क्या नंबर्स आ सकते हैं, राइट. एंड ये स्ट्रक्चर का जो मैंने आपको वैल्यू बताई थी कि आप 6 to 9 मतलब 6, 7, 8, 9 ये 4 साल का जो रिक्वायरमेंट है वो आप टोटल कर लो एंड उस हिसाब से आप स्ट्रक्चर में एलोकेशन दे सकते हो. तो यहाँ पे 20% इज गोइंग इनटू डेट फंड्स. वी कैन लुक एट द स्ट्रक्चर का कैलकुलेशन कि कितना होना चाहिए. बट यहाँ पे टोटल इन्वेस्टमेंट 1 crore है. टोटल मंथली पे आउट्स after 30 years is 3 crores. Value after 20 years is 4 crores. Value after 30 years is 8 crores. His standard deviation is only 9.5%. निफ्टी का स्टैंडर्ड डिविएशन 12% है. तो सर आपका रिस्क भी कम कर रहा हूँ, आपका रिटर्न्स भी बढ़ा रहा हूँ, आपका इन्वेस्टमेंट वैल्यू भी डबल कर रहा हूँ सर, आपका मंथली एक्सपेंसेस भी इन्फ्लेट करके वी कैन मैनेज. सो ऑल दोस थिंग्स इज समथिंग व्हिच इज क्लियरली मैनेज्ड हियर, राइट. So just let me change this. So this is the slide. This is the second sheet, which is the calculation sheet. यहाँ पे ये numbers है. तो यहाँ पे आप देख सकते हो कि client ने जो 23 lakhs डाले हैं, his monthly flow is 40,000. तो every month it is increasing. First 5 year का requirement is being met. तो 5 years client का 30,000 बचा है, but first 5 year का requirement is being met by the debt portfolio. Then from the fifth, that is the 5th year onwards, the money will come out from the structure product and then the money will come out from the equity. तो structure product में कॉम्बिन कितना allocation देना है, तो आप यहाँ पे देख सकते हो कि आप 6th to 9th year मतलब 48 ऑब्जर्वेशंस का आप एक टोटल कर लो, इट इज 26,40,000. दिस इज द मंथली रिक्वायरमेंट. सो अकॉर्डिंगली यू कैन ऐड द वैल्यू फॉर स्ट्रक्चर, कि आपको 15 लाख देना है या 20 लाख देना है, कि 15 lakhs will grow to 30 lakhs say in 5 years. तो आप 15 लाख दे सकते हो क्लाइंट को, so that his 6, 7, 8, 9 year का जो रिक्वायरमेंट है that can be covered by the structure product, and then it goes to म्यूचुअल फंड्स. फिर वो इक्विटी म्यूचुअल फंड से निकलेगा पैसा. So यहाँ पे I've put it for 30 years. You can see it. You can play around in this calculator कि क्या वैल्यू आती है. So 20th year में if you look at here it is 1,01,000. मतलब 40,000 से स्टार्ट किया था, 1,01,000 है. अगर मैं इनपुट शीट में जाके यहाँ पे 50,000 करता हूँ and ये 1 crore रखता हूँ and say this is at 7%. This is what we were discussing, right? It is 1.81. मतलब ये लास्ट 20th ईयर में 1,81,000 कर रहा है, नेक्स्ट ईयर से 1,93,000 करेगा. एंड ऑफ सो इसका 3 साल 30 years तक चलेगा ही नहीं पोर्टफोलियो इफ इट्स कॉस्ट इज गेटिंग inflated at 7%. So you can use this calculator. I'll show you one more example. Suppose the client has a 1 crore and he wants to withdraw 1 lakh rupees, right? And suppose ये अपन 20 ही रखते हैं. So his withdrawal is 12% approximately. Now at 12%, the chances are that his corpus will get over. So let's look at the data के first 5 years का तो requirement met यहाँ से meet हो जाएगा. Then second 6 to 9 years structure के लिए we'll again have to change कि क्या value है. तो अगर 20 lakhs भी डालते हैं, so you see here 8th 9th year में his money is getting over. So we can actually inform the client and we can tell him, sir, कि अगर 1 करोड़ का है और 1 लाख है सर, तो ये 10-11 साल तक चलेगा सर, उससे ज्यादा नहीं चलने वाला है आपका कॉर्पस. So either my corpus has to increase or my monthly flow has to reduce, sir. Because ये किधर भी नहीं चलेगा. 12% अगर मैं redeem करता हूँ, very difficult. It will not work. This is something which we should tell the client upfront कि सर ये नहीं हो सकता. And अगर कोई करके भी दे रहा है आपको, तो सर then chances are कि सर 11 साल भी नहीं चलेगा, right? So certain things which we need to explain to the clients very clearly upfront. Generally this works well in a 6 to 8% range. Retirement plans generally work in that 6 to 8% range. उससे अगर ज्यादा requirement है, तो then boss the client's money will not continue, नहीं टिकेगा. तो ये आप क्लाइंट को डेफिनेटली बता दो 0.57%. यू कैन प्ले अराउंड विद इन्फ्लेशन नंबर. क्लाइंट बोलता है नहीं यार मेरा इन्फ्लेशन नहीं होगा, यू कैन टेक अ लोअर नंबर से 3% और 5%. यू कैन प्ले अराउंड विद दैट. इट विल गिव यू मेरा फ्लो कैसे होगा, मेरा पैसा कैसे ग्रो होगा. विल आई हैव सफिशिएंट मनी आफ्टर 20 years, आफ्टर 25 years, आफ्टर 30 years? आई थिंक सो वो क्रिटिकल है, तो वो आप डेफिनेटली एक्सप्लेन कर लो. बट यूज दिस कैलकुलेटर for retirement planning. Show it to the client. I think so ये critical है कि आप उनको दिखाओ, because then he will see कि यार हाँ मेरा पैसा कहाँ जा रहा है और हर month हर year कितना increase हो रहा है. I think so ये if you show it to him, he can visualize it, and which is something which is very critical, right? Because retirement money is something, because his lifestyle is going to be dependent on that, so we have to be careful there. So you show it to him. I think so he can visualize this on the retirement plan. If you have also clients who are closer to retirement, then this is another calculator which is there in the same sheet. You can actually do that pre-retirement stage and post-retirement stage. So say let's say कि एक client है, उसका 30,000 का आज का expenses है, उसका H&I inflation rate is 10%. His current age is say 55, right? 60 पे retire होना चाहता है. So number of years left for retirement is only 5. तो here also whatever is there in yellow you can change. आप उसकी age डाल सकते हो and उसकी retirement age भी डाल सकते हो. He wants to retire earlier, he wants to retire later, right? So retirement year पे उसका monthly expenses से approximately 50,000, right? So yearly gap required, मतलब पूरे साल में retirement year पे उसको almost 6 लाख रुपया लगने वाला है. Then कितने साल तक लगने वाला है, मतलब 60 पे रिटायर होके नहीं, I can think कि यार नहीं 85 तक तो मुझे प्लान करना है कि 85 years तक उसे रेगुलर इनकम चाहिए. तो यू पुट इन दैट नंबर. लेट्स टेक से 20 years लेते हैं, अपने प्रीवियस एग्जांपल 20 years का देखा था. सो पोस्ट रिटायरमेंट रेट ऑफ रिटर्न इज 11%. व्हाट वी डिस्कस्ड कि 11.8 का आईआरआर था, आई हैव टेकन 11%. I've taken inflation at 7%, right? So real return is 4%. मतलब real terms में उसकी value 4% पे grow हो रही है. So client will require approximately 80 lakhs to finish his overall corpus in 20 years. तो 80 लाख अगर डालते हो सर, और अगर आपका मंथली एक्सपेंस अगर 50,000 है, तो 20 साल में अगर जीरो करना है सर, तो 80 लाख में आपका काम हो जाएगा. इफ द पोस्ट रिटायरमेंट रिटर्न्स 11%, इन्फ्लेशन इज 7%. नाउ यू आस्क हिम कि सर अभी तक आपका क्या इन्वेस्टमेंट वैल्यू है? What are your investments in mutual funds? What are your investments in direct equity? What are your investments in FD, gold, real estate, everything put together? And what is the return? So here you can use the war calculator which we use when we do the first meeting. क्या है आपकी, कौन सी स्कीम्स में किधर, कौन सी स्कीम्स में कौन से एसेट क्लास में कितना पैसा है, तो वो सब डालने के बाद आपको पता चल जाएगा कि सपोज क्लाइंट बोलता है कि नहीं मेरे पास अभी 10 लाख है and it is expected to grow at 6%. So we can tell him that how much money we will need to invest, say over the next 5 years, either through a lump sum or through an SIP or through a step up SIP, जिससे you will be able to have a proper retired life. This is the objective here. So 10 lakhs 5 साल में it will become 13 lakhs 38,000. तो 80 lakhs minus 13 lakhs तो 66 lakhs चाहिए. प्री रिटायरमेंट रिटर्न ऑन इन्वेस्टमेंट्स, तो अगर 5 साल तक सर अगर ये आप 10 लाख मुझे अभी देते हो एंड 5 years बचा है मेरे पास, एंड इफ वी कैन ग्रो इट एट 12%, दैट आल्सो एड्स वैल्यू. तो यहाँ पे भी मैं उसको वैल्यू ऐड कर सकता हूँ. तो यू कैन हेल्प मैनेज हिज करंट इन्वेस्टमेंट्स एंड देन यू कैन आल्सो प्लान फॉर हिज रिटायरमेंट. दैट्स द ऑब्जेक्टिव फ्रॉम दिस. सो यहाँ पे ऑप्शन क्या है कि आप या तो सर 81,000 की SIP करो पर मंथ, या आप 60,000 की SIP करो बट यू आर ग्रोइंग इट एट 15% per annum. So then you can reach, or you can invest 38 lakhs today. Then you will be able to manage your expenses of 50,000 growing at 7% per annum for the next 20 years in your retirement. So this is another eye opener where the client can actually see कि यार मुझे अगर रिटायर होना है, मुझे कितना पैसा लगने वाला है, कितने साल के लिए लगने वाला है, मेरा एक्सपेंस कितना है, तो आज की तारीख में मुझे कितना इन्वेस्ट करना पड़ेगा जिससे मैं उस स्टेज तक या उस कॉर्पस तक पहुंच पाऊं. दिस इज ऑल्सो समथिंग विच इज वेरी क्रिटिकल. सो आप ये दोनों चीज बता सकते हो क्लाइंट को. समवन हु इज क्लोजर टू रिटायरमेंट 50-55 years and he is thinking of retirement, I think so ये कैलकुलेटर दिखाओ एंड देन ऑल्सो शो हिम the SWP plan, the retirement calculator. I think so दोनों दिखाओगे so he can actually visualize कि यार हाँ 50 से 80 तक मेरे लाइफ में अगर मुझे इतना खर्चा है मेरा और इतना मेरा पोर्टफोलियो है, so at what rate it should grow and what would be the value which I will consume over the next 30 years. I think so full plan दिखता है. So use this calculator effectively guys. You involve the client here, ask him, show him and input the information so that even he knows that what he needs to do for a smooth retired life. So this is a precursor to a retirement. So suppose there is a young client also, आप उसके लिए भी use कर सकते हो, या वेल सिप वाला प्लान भी यूज कर सकते हो, बट यूज दिस एज वेल. यहाँ पे भी आपको समझ में आएगा कि क्लाइंट की रिक्वायरमेंट क्या है. दिस विल हेल्प इन मेकिंग हिज गोल वेरी क्लियर, राइट? एंड मोस्ट ऑफ द have that goal. So ask him certain questions कि सर expenses कितने हैं. You would have not thought of that as well. So put that in his mind. पूछोगे तो वो बताएगा, वो सोचेगा भी, right? And with this he can actually see कि यार where he's placed. Is he well placed है, कोई टेंशन नहीं है, तो then probably retirement plan की भी जरूरत नहीं है. But if he is dependent on this money and then there is no income and he is just covered with that 6, 7, 8%, then proper planning is something which is required. He can't depend on an FD or a senior citizen saving schemes, right? So you can use this calculator as well, and it would help show him exactly what he plans to do and how he can do this and how you can help this. So ये तीनों चीज करने में partners, the benefit is that if you do the pre-retirement, you can actually get his current portfolio, you can manage his current portfolio, and then you can also manage his retirement corpus. If the client is already retired, you can ask for the retirement corpus. The retirement corpus generally is bigger, right? So you can get bigger tickets. A lot of clients are there. A lot of money is getting into FDs or senior citizen saving schemes. I think so We just need to reach out to the client at the right time. You can explain this to him and the client can understand कि ये चीज कर सकते हैं, ये चीज करो. If the client, काफी बार client बोलता है नहीं ये कभी देखा नहीं है, सोचा नहीं है, you can actually show him, sir, you can start with this, at least you'll understand certain things, right? So retirement money, you get a lot of money at one go, so that's something which is beneficial, right? uh, is beneficial for you, it is beneficial for the client as well, because the client's money is actually growing and he will have a better retired life compared to the other options, right? So that's on the calculator and the retirement planning presentation. I open the floor for any questions, and you can post the questions in the Q&A box and I'll be happy to take them, guys. Yeah. Any questions, partners, you can post in the Q&A box and I'll be happy to take them. There's one suggestion of Yogesh. I think so, Yogesh, we can definitely think of this, of building it in the portal. So a print of plan and can be done. So it would take time, but we can probably think of that. That is something which we can do. Yes, Vishal, we can share the Excel with the client. That's not a problem. So once the structure is matured, we invest in again in the debt funds, and the money will go out from the debt funds. So the next 4 years, the money will stay in the debt funds and the money will go out from the debt funds. So that money is again safe and secure. You don't want to play on that money. So if the client doesn't want immediate income, but just want to hold the corpus, so uh, Nitika, we can actually do this. So no Excel is required. Probably his plan starts from the third year onwards, right? So his plan only starts from third year onwards. The value remains the same. You can just show him that, sir, this is the plan. This will start from 2-3 years onwards without any added investments, right? And you can put that money, or you can say he invests, say, a 1 crore. Uh, you can take a conservative assumption and grow that money over the next 2-3 years, and you can put in that value there in the portfolio. So that is something which you can show. See, the plan will not change. It's like the date will only change. So you can show them, sir, that this is something which will happen after 3 years or after 2 years, whenever the client wants to withdraw money, because the allocations won't change. If the client is investing today and the money wants to grow, so you can grow that money over the next 3 years at simple interest, and then you can put in those values so that he gets a clear picture. I hope I have answered. So, Yogesh, now we've kept it for 30 years, so you can show it to the client. See, you can show him the entire journey as such, that, sir, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, what will be the value? So you can show that to the client. And if you want to make it after zero after 15 years, you can play around with the calculator. This will be much more engaging for the client as well, because he'll feel involved in it rather than just showing a number. You can show him the entire cash flow and how the flows will move up or move down basis the assumption. So if any variable changes, this is how his cash flow will be impacted. So you can actually show him the second sheet, which will take him through the entire journey, right? So that's why we've not kept any specific number as such. I've taken it to 30 years so that you can show him the entire 30-year journey. So why not hybrid equity? So again, uh, so asset allocation is important. So you should divide it very clearly and very crystally. If I invest in hybrid equity, right? So it is equity exposure. And if I want to redeem money and if the next 5 years are bad, my returns are impacted. My money is impacted. So I am taking the principal out, right? I'm reducing the principal. So whenever we discuss, it's always the philosophy which doesn't change here, Sudhir. So asset allocation is important, and you should decide at the overall wealth level rather than the fund manager deciding that what should be the allocation. So here we are clearly demarcating and defining that how much should go into debt, how much should go into equity, and with a clear-cut objective. Why you want to play with the client's money and invest in equity in the first year and withdraw money from there. I think so. It is a very risky game because the client is dependent on this retirement money, right? So we have to have the objective very clear. Uh, these hybrid funds are not going to, because the equity exposure is there, right? Last 2 years, market has not delivered any return. So it's a problem, right? And he's taking out money. So we don't want to take things for chance. They take a chance that no market will do well. So they just invest in equity. That's something which is not the right strategy or thought process. That's the reason you clearly define that how much money should go in which asset class. And there's a clear cut objective why we are investing in that asset class. What's the role of that asset class in the overall scheme of things? So there the objective should be very clear. Otherwise, we are doing the same things or that we are hoping for things. That shouldn't be the case. There is a mention of existing flows which reduces the monthly outflow, which is post inflation. I actually didn't get you, Vishal. Uh, why we have 5 years for debt funds? So we need to give time to equity as well to grow, right? I think so. We need to give time to our equity. 3 years is too short a time horizon. After 3 years, where do we invest in, right? So 5 years is a good enough time frame. If the client doesn't want to do structured products, still I'm giving him enough time that equity is touching equity after 5 years. A risky game, but comparatively lower risk compared to a 3 year period. So 5 years is that is first 5 years are settled, 6 to 9 years from the structure, and then ninth year, 10th year onwards, the money goes out of from the equity. If you take a lower time horizon, I think so. With retirement, you should be conservative rather than aggressive. I think so. This is something which is very critical. You should be more conservative there. That's why we've taken a 5 year period, because 5 years, the client's money is safe, secure. His first 5 years are secured. Then 6 to 9 years structure, high probability, lower risk, lower movement in Nifty, right? So I am being more conservative there as well. That 5 years debt, then 5 years, then 4 years structure, and then I'm moving to equity Prajakta. So that's the thought process. We have to be more conservative there rather than aggressive, because retirement monies are difficult to replace and replenish. That's the reason. Just let me check. I think they're referring to the third. inflation and a mention of existing flows which reduces the monthly outflow, which is post inflation. So I'll just read the question again. I'm sorry, Vishal. Probably we can connect. I think so. If we, I'm not able to understand the question. My apologies for that. So in the input sheet, there is a mention of existing flows that reduce the monthly outflow, which is post-inflation. Does not make sense. Ideally, it shouldn't. 1,000 is my monthly expenses, and with inflation, it is growing to 48,000 per month. So probably we can connect, Vishal. I think so, and I'll be able to clarify. And there's a mention of existing monthly flows without inflation. Then we will do that.